Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. I am Brother Mushtaq coming back with the Happy Strong Family Studio live here at Masjid Darul Iman. And this time around, we are going to be focusing on excellence in parenting. And that may be a loaded question, but we do have the co founder and principal of GLA, the Gibraltar Leadership Academy, based here in Toronto, right across from the Islamic Foundation of Toronto, otherwise very lovingly known as Nugget Mosque.
Yes, it is.
So, Brother Omar, do tell us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a very long bio. Alhamdulillah, certified teacher from the Ontario College of Teachers, a black belt in karate. So if we want to talk up, bullying, you'd be a very well versed or at least an expert in that. You are a founder of the Muslim Big Brothers and Sisters Association as well, and you are doing a walking Sira tour in Umrah. So a lot. So let's unpack this.
Yeah, you're making me sound a lot better than I think I am. But so I guess maybe if I can walk back a few of those things. So, before I became a teacher, I was involved with a group of people that started a Muslim Big Brothers and Sisters organization. We've since moved on, so that doesn't exist if anybody's looking for that right now. And currently, my main focus is obviously the Gibraltar Leadership Academy. And so we have a campus in Scarborough, and we also have a campus in Durham, where we service the communities both in those cities. My parents really pushed me into the martial arts. My dad did judo in Egypt before he moved to Canada. So he was really particular that we be trained, in that regard. And if and when we get to bullying, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in bullying, but I would say that, my parents definitely gave me the tools that I needed should I ever have needed them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's kind of deconstruct this notion of excellence from a parenting angle, right? So in terms of like happy, strong family, we're always talking up a few core facets of what a happy, strong Muslim family, what that entails, right? Parenting is obviously a big pillar, a big part of that. You have relationships, another big part of that. You have husband-wife relationships, and then ultimately the kids, right? Kids, students, children. So now this is a little bit of a joint talk. Let's tackle it from the parenting angle, and then also let's also talk about it from a student angle as well. But what can parents do? How can they kind of prepare themselves to help their children, right? It's like that old saying, help me help you.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I mean, if children are coming in, from healthy emotional households, then they tend to perform better. They make my job easier. And so I think that most of my experience in the educational sense has been primarily with older students, but I have young children of my own. So I'm learning a lot. Alhamdulillah, my wife, she does a lot of the research and she imparts it on me, and then I take it to the school. So if we can break it down, I guess maybe we start with young children.
Sure.
And so, in my opinion, when it comes to young children, I believe that emotional development is more important than academic development. If you focus on the emotional regulation, so being able to handle disappointment, being able to handle failure, being able to navigate stressful situations, that prepares them for the challenges that they might face in academia later on. So that's my, I guess, would be my number one point for parents, is that we don't have to test our kids. Do you know the spelling? Do you know these colors? What's this letter? That's not as important right now, right? What's more important is, hey, you didn't get it this time, but you know what? Let's try again, right? Where's the encouragement, please? Like, as parents, I believe that we have to be our children's biggest cheerleaders.
Okay.
Right. We're their first sense of kind of where they fit into the world.
Right.
Right. And that comes from our parents. Right. So our parents really dictate sort of how emotionally healthy we are as we move into schooling, or we move into the workplace and stuff like that. So I would definitely strongly encourage parents to look at that piece. Like, how do we talk to our children? Is our relationship with our children just based on commands? Do this. I need you to do this. Why didn't you finish this?
Right.
Right. As opposed to, getting down to their level and saying, this is why I need you to do it. right? Helping them understand and navigate compartmentalizing tasks, right? So these are life skills that I feel like we as parents can impart onto our children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as our children get, a little bit older, then we have to be a little bit more cognizant of the company that they keep.
Okay.
Right. We have to be a little bit more cognizant of what's happening actually at school.
All right.
So we can't get involved as parents when the report card comes home. We can't say, "Oh, what happened here?" Well,
Right.
what happened here a lot of times is, we as parents are not paying attention. We drop our kids off to school. We assume that they're learning everything.
Mm.
Maybe a test comes home and they get, whatever the mark is. But as parents, we should be, as much as possible, and we all come from different, circumstances and I guess possibilities of being involved.
Mhm.
But as much as possible, we should be at least knowing what unit is my child on.
Right.
Right. What did you do at school today? Having conversations with your children is a great way to discern what's happening in their lives.
Right. Right.
But that environment of wanting to, to have that, your children wanting to have that conversation is fostered at a young age, right? Like if you don't do that at a young age, and then all of a sudden you're walking up to your teenage son and say, "Hey, what'd you do at school today?" He's gonna be like, "Nothing."
Yeah, and that's the catch-22, isn't it? I find even when I was growing up in Mississauga, my parents would just literally, like you're saying, Omar, look at my report card and be like, "Oh, you got, such and such a grade, or why are you getting this percentage, and what's going on?" To use the term, it was more perhaps in retrospect, love my parents and all, but maybe it was to use the term helicopter parenting, just kind of coming in at that very moment and kind of diagnosing, troubleshooting, or just basically why, right?
Yeah.
And I think to kind of pick apart maybe a past theme from this podcast, this weekly live stream, is connecting before correcting.
That's right.
So, Brother Omar, come on, tell us, you obviously speak with a lot of parents, and on the flip side, you speak with the students as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how can parents kind of get away from that approach of just kind of being there in the moment? How can they foster that relationship, you're saying, right? Because I think for a lot of parents, this is a different mindset, focusing on emotional intelligence, the emotional quotient, right? EQ instead of IQ.
Yeah.
Right. Because maybe that's the default for a lot of us. Maybe that's how we were raised. Maybe that's the system. Maybe that's just an overall misconstrued misconception or expectation. So how can parents kind of really connect with their child? You have a lot of experience. So come on, just impart upon some of the ways of saying, "Hey, so-and-so, like, is it that dinner table discussion? Is it having that going, again, picking on another theme from a past session? We had one guest say, "Hey, just right before bedtime, great time to connect with your kids." Right. So give us some of this, some of these gems.
So I'm going to approach this from a high school perspective first.
Okay.
Right. So you have your teenage children who are going through hormonal changes and really trying to find their place in the world, right? And we also have to understand that our children are met with a variety of influences on a daily basis, most of which are not our own.
Yeah.
Right. And so actually, I do a lot of mediating between parents and students in GLA. So there, I'll have high school students saying, "Hey, my parents are not hearing me." And actually, last week we had a session at GLA where we focused. We're focusing a lot on parent education now.
Okay.
So we have parent workshops. So we had one last week where the sister who gave the presentation, she said that we need to get away from this idea of listening like a mechanic. So you go to the mechanic, right? They'll start the car, they put the ear to the car, and then every single noise, oh yeah, right? And they're just trying to diagnose and fix the problem so that they can get the car out of the shop.
Right.
And your children cannot feel like that's happening, because they need to feel like you are generally you're emotionally invested in what they're going through. For a lot of high school age children who are not connecting with their parents, there is some resentment or ill feelings for something that has happened or something that is happening. So we as parents, especially when we're dealing with our older children, we have to be ready to acknowledge some of our shortcomings. We're not perfect. We are not perfect people. We are very flawed human beings. And I think from the perspective of parents, I think we also have to understand sort of our own upbringing. and understanding why we do things the way that we do things. I mean, a lot of people have certain emotional triggers and emotional baggage that they carry with them that unfortunately they impart onto their own children.
Yeah.
Right. And they're, maybe, it's them trying to live vicariously through their children. Right. So I didn't have this opportunity, so I'm going to give you this opportunity. So you got to do it. Where it comes to, just nitpicking, nagging, right? Why aren't you doing this? Why don't you do it this way? I asked you to do this. Your children are also, human beings, right? And they need to be enticed and spoken to in a certain way so that you can, ultimately get compliance, right? Which is what a lot of parents are looking for.
Yeah.
I'm asking you to do this and you're not doing it, right? And unfortunately, we've adopted a military style where, like, listen, this is my house. I told you to do it and you're not doing it. Why are you not doing it?
And even that, the expectation I find many times is like within the next 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Or the parent does it themselves.
Yes. Right. And so I found that, and I've had great success with the minute that a parent is able to acknowledge some of this in front of their children, right? You'll be surprised at how much children are perceptive, right? And that's like, you know what? I understand, Mom. I understand, Dad, right? Even, people like my age, right? They're like, look, I'm still waiting for an apology from my parents for this. It's not coming, right? How long are you going to hold on to that?
Yeah.
Right. And so for these kids, look, sitting down saying, look, man, I know that when you were growing up, I could have done this a little bit better, but I'm trying right now. And I want to be better, and I want you to be better. And let's work through this together. And a lot of people are not receptive to this. Like, I can't lower myself like this in front of my children. Right. Like, my children will never respect me if I apologize to them. But you'd be surprised at how much more respect you'll get from your children if you are able to communicate to them that, you know what, you're a human being, I'm a human being, we make mistakes, right? But we're in this together. Right. And so that's sort of your high school situation. With your younger children, we have this habit as parents of, again, dictating what we want from our kids. And typically smaller kids, they'll do it. Right. They'll do it, but they won't understand why.
Right.
And they also don't necessarily connect with the reasons. Just, we developed this system. You do it. You do it because I said so. And sometimes we don't even recognize the tone of voice. So I guess one of the biggest tips that I got as a parent is getting down to your children's level.
Okay.
Right. So for me personally, what I've worked on with my own children, my son is 5, sorry, and my daughter is 3. And so what I do now is when I'm trying to get compliance, right, I will approach my children, get close, get to their level, right? Maybe initiate some sort of physical touch, hand on the shoulder, right? Hey, I need you guys to do this. But it's not that I need you guys to do it, but why do I need you to do it? I need you guys to clean up your toys because somebody can step on this and they can get hurt, and we don't want that, right? So also informing them as to the reason, why do I need this compliance, right? Why is it a good thing for us to do? So even still with schooling, I need you to, study for your test because, this is important knowledge. This is important knowledge. This is how you might apply it. But I find attaching a reason to anything that we're looking to have other people do tends to get more compliance than really just saying, I'm telling you to do it. So you better do it. Right. Because that's not a conversation anymore. Right. That's, at the very least, a veiled threat.
Right.
Do it or else.
So then in terms of, like, as you say, Omar, instead of giving commands, right? Because I find a lot of perhaps parenting, maybe, old school parenting, or maybe just parenting by default, is those giving of commands. So how can parents then kind of change their habits to better connect with their child or children? As you're saying, get down to their level, kind of inform them, let them know why this request is being made, why they're being asked to do this. Put yourself in their shoes, perhaps even. Obviously, we should do that as parents. But what other things can parents do to kind of foster these good habits so that they can connect with their children?
So I think one of the things that I've learned personally is, if your children are given the opportunity to take lead in certain situations, given responsibility, right? But also given the opportunity to make a mess, right? So, for example, one of the things that I do with my children is we make pizza. Obviously, my children are small, right? This was a very daunting thing for me because the minute you say, you know what, we're gonna have flour, we're gonna have water, we're gonna have shredded cheese, right? I think of mess.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, I'm gonna have to clean this up. And or if we're making cookies or whatever, your mind goes to all the work that you're going to have, all the extra work you're going to have to do by allowing your children to be involved. Right. And so for me as a parent, I have to remove that from my mindset right away and say, you know what, there's going to be a mess, but there's also going to be learning. So we learned about counting, right? We counted all the toppings. They made a design that was art, right? Then we learned about the temperature, and we learned so much stuff. And was there a big mess? There was absolutely a big mess. But in my opinion, the mess was very insignificant in relation to, number one, the connection that I had with my kids, right? The memory that they'll make, and then also what they learned, right? I mean, my son, he has a habit of my son attends Gibraltar, and so his kindergarten teacher says that he has all these random facts, and he just knows all this random stuff, and it's just stuff that he picks up at home by doing stuff with us. And we're by no means perfect parents, but these are things that we try to get our kids involved, so that if our children feel close to us, and they feel attached to us, then compliance is pretty easy at that point, right? Because they know where it's coming from. It's not coming from a place of dictatorship, right? I've already had these loving experiences with my children, and other parents have had loving experiences with their children. So it really is just a matter then of fostering that relationship and saying, you know what, I love you as my child, and everything I ask you to do is stemming from that, that pizza or the cookies, or you know what I mean. It's you have to anchor, right, your interactions with your children on the positive stuff, right? So when you're asking them to do difficult things, they don't think that that's the only thing that you're asking them to do, right? And just on that point is, I would highly encourage us to think about the experiences that we share with our children. So, for example, I was earlier in the school year, maybe September, October, I was in the parking lot with a parent, and I was just having a chat, and one of my students who rides their bikes to school rode past us. So the parent, she got emotional and tears started to well in her eyes. I'm like, are you okay? She said that, my dad used to put me on his handles of his bike. And we used to ride around, and her father passed away. And she goes, whenever I see a bike, I remember my dad. Right. And so just making those memories, because memories or feelings, they don't leave us. The words do, the knowledge might, right? But you will never, ever lose that connection to your children if you build experiences with them. Another sister at the school, she says on the first day of Ramadan, for suhoor, she makes cinnamon buns. And she says that when she makes cinnamon buns, on the first memory that her children will have of Ramadan is that scent of cinnamon buns, and they're making that positive association. Another parent takes their children to get ice cream every Jummah. Right. So this, you know what I mean? So making those positive things, it can't just be like, do this. Why aren't you doing this? Like, unfortunately, we have a tendency to criticize a lot of our kids a lot of the time. And I think we have to move away from that. That doesn't mean that you can't correct your children. Right. What it means is that there's a way to correct your children. Like the Prophet, peace be upon him, he gave us some advice on correcting people. He said, you never correct somebody when you're angry. Ever. Okay. Never correct someone in front of other people. And when you correct somebody, you are supposed to approach it from the perspective of we, not you. So you don't exclude them from, the general, whether it be the family or the society or whatever it is. Like if I do something wrong and you say you did this and you did this and you did this wrong, right? Then I feel like an outsider, right? But if I approach it as, what, we don't do this, right? Or this is how we are supposed to act, I'm still kind of in the circle, and it helps with the corrective behavior.
Right. So now I see that we have a few questions from the audience. I'm gonna ask producer Kashif, who is the forever the sound of the podcast. Producer Kashif, if you could please give us those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Jazakallah. Before we get to the questions, just a few things. One, I just wanted to let the audience know, next week we got Sister Hiba coming back for a very timely conversation on Ramadan just around the corner. Great. So it's going to be a blessed Ramadan, a guide for expectant and new mothers. We've had her before. There was great feedback. She's a certified doula and a childbirth educator. So please stay tuned for that conversation, inshallah.
Awesome.
Next week, Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And before we get to the questions, also, Brother Omar, we were talking before, and you were telling us about a great initiative, the Walking Sira.
Yeah.
If you could just tell us a little bit more about that. And there's also a donation and auction, a draw happening. So just so let the audience know about that also, for anyone watching live or watching before the draw.
Sure. So one of the things that we do at GLA is a lot of student-led initiatives. So what ended up happening was there was a group of students, and they approached me and they said, "Brother, we want to go for Umrah." So I looked at them. I said, "Go with your parents." and they said, that's fine, but some of our parents are working, they can't get time, and when they do have time, it's expensive, and so they said, you know what, I'm sure there's like a low season that we could try to go into and save some money.
Yeah.
And so there's a group of boys, they had approached me and they said, brother, will you take us? And I said, I gotta ask my wife. And so alhamdulillah, I got the permission from the boss, and so I said, look, we'll go, but you guys need to plan the whole thing.
Right.
I said, I want you guys to find the flights. I want you guys to find hotels. I want you guys to figure out how the visa. I want you guys to figure out everything. And then I want you guys to call a travel agent, and I want you guys to see which one is more economical. I want you guys to do the work. And so they did it, right? And it ended up being more cost effective to go through an agent. So that's what we did. But the students did the work.
Amazing.
Right. And I said, and I said, what do you guys want to learn? And they said, we want to learn the Sira. Right. So at the school, we call it Sira-centric education. Okay. So we try to link everything that we teach about Islam back to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the context, right? Okay. So the premise of the trip, right, is that we are going to be attending the sites and speaking about what happened in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the physical places that it happened.
Oh, wonderful!
So that's the sort of what we're hoping to achieve. I mean, as many landmarks as we can find. I know Makkah is a little bit harder than Medina, but that's the initiative. So the students, being students, they wanted to do some fundraising initiatives. So they were able to reach out to Muslim businesses, some of the parents at the school, to donate items. There's a couple of images. I think there's Blue Jays tickets, Raptors tickets. They have a signed jersey, and many other things. And so they essentially they're going to be doing a draw from the donors. So it's not a raffle. I think raffles can be problematic, but essentially it is anybody who donates any amount. They're put into this draw. They're only put in once, and the draw, inshallah, will be tomorrow. So if anybody's interested in supporting the students, they can donate by e-transfer. I believe it's their Umrah at Gibraltar.ca.
All right, awesome. And just a reminder to everybody, it was already up on the screen, but the draw ends tomorrow, or the draw will be held tomorrow, Monday.
Yeah, the cutoff is midnight tonight. Okay. And then just so we can compile all the names, make sure that we have everybody in there. And then inshallah, I believe it's going to be at noon tomorrow.
Okay, inshallah. Yes. Awesome. Now, Producer Kashif, those questions, please.
Yes, absolutely. So we had one come in from the live stream. So first there was a comment saying just, mashallah, thanks for organizing, very important information. Now, the actual question that came in, I won't display it on the screen, but they asked for a very specific moral issue that's sort of going on around us in society. But really, living in this Western world, like there's a lot of things in schools, public schools, that are taught that challenge our morals as Muslims, right? Our Islamic values that are against what we believe in. So the audience member mentioned a specific one, but there's a bunch of them, right? So he or she was just asking, how do we safeguard our children, and keep them safe and guided from sort of these moral challenges that are around us? So obviously Islamic schools is one way of doing it, right? But how, even in Islamic schools, like how protected are children sort of from those things that are maybe being taught in public schools?
So you picked a really good one to start with. One of the things that I would, I guess, advise parents is that when we use the term safeguard, what that typically means is that we don't want our children to know that it exists, right? We don't want our children to know that this is out there. And so, this is why parents register the kids in Islamic school, because they think that they can kind of put it off as long as possible. My advice as an educator, and both as an educator and as a parent, is that we need to have these conversations with our children. Right? And we need our children to understand our perspective. We have to control the information that our children get. Because on any given day, our children go out into the world, or we've given them, and I have issues with this, unrestricted access to the internet.
Yeah.
Right. And if we don't control the messaging from ourselves, then our children will get it from elsewhere.
Yes.
And so, as difficult as it might be, right, and unfortunately, especially with our, some members of our community, we're a little bit conservative. We don't like to have these talks with our children, but it's important that we engage our children and have them understand the perspective, because the reality is they will be exposed to it. They will become aware of it. And we can't just say, you know what, let's just ignore it as long as possible, because when they are exposed to it, they don't have any tools or knowledge or any sort of information. I had mentioned at the beginning that we are our children's first source of trust and information. So when we impart this on our children and we have them understand they're at least equipped and prepared for when they do encounter it or when they do see it. And then on top of that, they are comfortable asking us questions about it, because you don't want your children asking other people questions about things that they should be asking you.
Right. And that's really the catch-22, isn't it? As being a parent. I mean, this is just me kind of providing a little bit of color commentary now.
Mhm.
The Quran, in fact, is very graphic, and I know the word I'm using.
Mhm.
If you look at whether you're reading the native Arabic or you're reading any language translation, let's just say English, it's very graphic, it's very descriptive,
Mhm.
to the point where it actually mentions the male fluid, the female embryo, the various stages of the embryonic development within the womb, and so on and so forth. So if we as parents are not openly discussing this with our children, and the fact that, Allah has made pairs amongst ourselves and so on and so forth, you're right. Where are they going to get this information from? Clearly, they can get it nowadays from TikTok, right? YouTube Shorts. They can get it from the dark web. They can get it from message boards, so on and so on and so on and so on.
Exactly. And so we as parents have to come out of our shell a little bit and say, look, this is what it is.
Yeah.
If the first set of information comes from us, rest assured your children will come to you with follow-up questions, right? But the minute you're like, you ask your mom or your dad about something, like, oh no, you're not ready for that.
So, Brother Omar, how do we tackle this? So I was at an aqiqah last night here at Masjid Al-Iman, and even within my own table, there was a bit of a default question in that, certain members of our community, even within my own circle, they're from quote unquote back home, right? And whether they've fully integrated, they are integrated Canadian citizens on their way to become Canadian citizens, or maybe like myself, first generation Canadians. I still find maybe there's a component, maybe there's a good ratio, whatever that is, of parents who are still, whether they're from India, Egypt, Pakistan, the Caribbean, they're, from back home, and they really haven't gotten out of that shell of being back home. So they themselves, they grapple with that. They're like, oh, back home, the kids went out and they played cricket all night and they came, home whenever, and, was raised because they were just out in the alleyway. That was the literal comment from last night.
Yeah.
Whereas here in Canada, things are different, man. Like, things are different. The better you adjust and realize that as a parent, the better you can connect, and so on and so forth, right? So how I'm sure you've had this question. You're all smiles here. I'm sure you've had this question, but as an educator, how have you tackled that question?
So, I guess I mentioned, I kind of just touched on it a few minutes ago, but parent education is really important now. There's two sides to it, though.
Okay.
Like, you can offer the education, but people have to be receptive to it as well.
100%.
Right. And
100%.
in order to, in education, we have this, saying that you can't fill a full cup. Right. You have to be willing to empty some. You have to be willing to receive some of it. And so for me, at least in my work, is that we are focusing a lot on parent workshops. Right. We're focusing a lot on parent education, where, like, it's hard. If the parents say, I came from back home and this didn't exist, what they're saying is, I don't know how to talk to my children about this. Right. Because my parents never talked to me about it. And so I don't think we can fault the parents too much on this. We can't just say, well, the parents just don't want to do it. Maybe they don't know how.
Yeah.
Right. And if they don't know how, then, I can't teach you something that I don't know. Right. And not just that, but like, that's a very intimidating topic as it is. And so to sit down with my child and be like, to kind of fumble around it, it can be uncomfortable for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
And do you find it's a generational too? And I'll give you a very specific example from my own kind of circle. One of my brother-in-laws, he was the last child of his family, big family, again, back home. Right. And his father, of my brother-in-law's own admission, his father would come up to him and go, oh yeah, son, hey, how's it going? What grade are you in now? Like, literally, that was the comment. So you can tell, maybe, definitely, to me, it seems like a generational thing. I know times have changed, even from last night at the aqiqah, the comment was, well, nowadays parents have to be more involved. Times are different. Parents have to be more involved. So, let's take that comment of, hey, kid, what grade are you in now, to nowadays, let's bring this back full circle to habits. how important, because this is how we started off the conversation, how important is it for parents to do that daily check-in, to do that kind of just that touch base, whether it's around the dining table or before going to bed, early in the morning, whenever, to kind of foster that relationship?
It is extremely, extremely important. I can tell you this as a principal, is that it's no longer acceptable, in my opinion. I use acceptable, very consciously. For the brothers typically do this. Yeah, don't worry, my wife takes care of the school stuff, and and so that's not something that we can't get away with that anymore. We can't pass these things on to our wives and be like, you know what, she'll take care of it.
Yeah,
we have to be involved. We have to know what's going on. Because when our children feel like we're involved, they're, again, coming back to this question that you're asking me, is they're willing to have that conversation. With especially boys, is they're not going to have this conversation necessarily with their mothers, right? It's the conversation that they might have with their fathers, right? But if you don't even know what grade your child's in, it kind of speaks to how much you can probably reach your child with regards to an uncomfortable conversation. So us as fathers living in Canada, possibly born in Canada, we have to be ready and willing to share with our children. A lot of our parents, and I can speak from the educational perspective, educational perspective, is a lot of our parents don't know what's out there in terms of social media.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
I had an issue previously with, a child's interaction on Discord. I called the parents in. I said, this is sort of what's happening. They're like, what's Discord? And I said, you know what? As parents, it's no longer acceptable for us to sort of say, you know what? I don't know what social media platforms my child is on. Right? I don't know who they're talking to. Right? Even, something as simple as like PlayStation. Right? People adding each other as friends, and we're having voice chats with them during the course of the game.
Same as Roblox. Yep.
Right?
Same as Minecraft.
Exactly. Right? So again, the more involved you are as a parent, the more conscious and really the crux of parenting is attempting to protect your children as much as possible. Right. And that becomes very difficult to do if you are not conscious of what you're giving them access to. And I make that very clear, is that you as parents give your children access to what they have access to. Right. You as parents have to administer that access if and when they are ready. And sort of become like, it's not just video games anymore, guys. Right. It's not like, when I was a kid, I was playing Super Mario, right, with my brother beside me. We had two controls. There was no internet connected to the Nintendo.
Yeah.
Right. But now they're connected, and we have, and not just that, but they're wearing headphones with a microphone, and we have no idea what's happening in here.
Yeah. And a lot of times credit cards are connected into it.
Yeah.
Kids are buying things virtually and so on and so forth. It gets all kinds of sideways from there. So Producer Kashif, we got a number of other questions. Let's get to them.
Yeah, we got some questions coming in on the live stream. We got questions. We put a call out on Instagram. So I don't think we'll get through all of them, but we'll try to get through as many as possible. So we have a question, and we touched upon it in the intro about bullying. And obviously there was an incident recently that went viral in the Muslim community. So this really refocused parents on having this conversation. So what steps can a parent take if they suspect their child are being bullied, or if the child has told them there is bullying occurring?
So this is, I believe, it's a complex question, because bullying looks like different things to different age groups, right? We tend to find that bullying becomes a little bit more physical in nature as the children get older. And in younger children, it more or less looks like exclusion and name calling. This is at least from my own experience, and obviously there are exceptions. But as parents, there's a few things that we should do at the home level, in my opinion. So number one, if your child is being picked on or bullied, it's really important that you reinforce to your children that is not their fault. Right? So sometimes we'll have parents like, well, you know what? If you didn't do this, then maybe he'll leave you alone. Right. So we should never, ever do that. Right. We need to reinforce in our children that, look, what happened wasn't right. Right. We need to teach them to name it. Right. That's bullying. Right. And then we need to assist our children in coming up with mechanisms to diffuse the situation. Because what does a bully want? A bully wants a reaction.
Yes.
Right. That's what a bully wants. Yes. The bully says something, they want you to say something back. They want it to escalate. We can talk about the psychology of a bully later, but with regards, that's what a bully wants. So what I would teach my own children How do we diffuse that situation, right? So that it makes it safe for you to either go tell an adult, right? Or it gets the bully to stop. Because the minute they understand they're not getting a reaction out of you, no matter how far they push you, then they'll likely stop on their own, in my opinion. But then also you have to have the confidence, like it can't just be lip service, right? If I'm bullying you, you have to believe in that those things are not true.
Yes.
And that's where we come in as parents, right? And we sit down, right? And we talk to our children about what's happening. I find a super interesting tactic that I learned in teachers college was actually having parents role play with their children.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. So the parent will take on the perspective of the bully.
Okay.
Right. And then they'll prepare their children, right, and put them in a scenario where, you know what, this might happen. What do you do? All right. And because the children has been through it in a safe space, when the space is no longer familiar to them, they're like, you know what? I've had this conversation before.
Okay.
No problem.
All right.
Right.
All right.
I'm okay.
All
Okay.
right.
The other thing, and I will stress this to all parents, I hope it never ever comes to that. But like you mentioned, I'm a 2nd degree black belt in Taekwondo. That training actually was a result of bullying that I experienced in my own schooling.
Okay.
Right. And I attended Islamic school. And so it's not that our faith-based schools are immune to some of this behavior. But my father felt like it was in my best interest to have training that hopefully I would never have to use, but I had it in the event that I needed it.
Okay.
And so, alhamdulillah, I never needed it at the school level. Yeah. But my point to all parents is that if we're not investing in our children in terms of skills to keep them safe, and I specifically mean, whether it's mixed martial arts or boxing or jujitsu or whatever it is, whatever your children take a liking to, I believe that every single one of our children should have some sort of self-defense training.
Okay.
Right. And that's not just to be used at school. It could be used anywhere because like we're seeing, right, unfortunately, our community can sometimes be susceptible to incidences. And so having our children be prepared in that regard. And again, inshallah, our dua for our children that they're always safe and that they'll never need it.
Yes.
But it's a disservice to our children that they don't have those skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Producer Kash, let's get to the next question.
Yeah, absolutely. It sort of goes into what we were talking about earlier and knowing.
Sorry, I didn't finish answering the question.
Oh, okay.
With regards to bullying, and parenting, it's very important that if it is happening at school and it is continuing, that the parents document, right? Yes.
Oh, document.
Yes.
All right.
Document, right? And document all meetings with the school's administration as well.
Oh.
Okay. So that's very important, that there should be a log, right? Of like, look, I sent you this email, right? I had this meeting with you, because if it, unfortunately, if it progresses to a point where, someone needs to be held accountable, right? Yes. The other child, right? The school will need to produce records of saying, like, you know what, all of this happened at school, and as a parent, I would advise that the school will keep records. And at my school in particular, we have incident reports for anything that does happen.
Okay.
And so we have a record at the school. The parents should also keep a record in the event that this escalates to a point where, we hope that it doesn't. So that was that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, that's really important information. That's very good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next question sort of talks more about what we were talking about before, knowing the world around our children, right? So the questions came in through Instagram. Will artificial intelligence, AI, impact schooling in a negative manner? What should parents know about it and do about it?
Oh my gosh, with ChatGTP and all of this talk about AI and OpenAI and Microsoft investing into ChatGTP and this Chrome extensions and yada, yada. What do we do about AI? Great question.
So that's a question I don't know that I have the answer to in terms of what do we do about it. I know that at the school level, and this is not just my school, this is just a general education thing, is that students, alhamdulillah, are quite resourceful. So what we're having now is not just students, but individuals are submitting work that is done by AI.
Yeah.
My students were telling me the other day about an individual that won an art competition with AI generated art.
Oh.
Right. So I guess the line is being blurred in terms of what's original, right? What can be attributed to an individual in terms of their own creation. Like if I input the commands into AI, is it mine? Or, I kind of told it what to do. Right. And so, but now you could literally, punch in a topic, right? And then say, you know what, I want an essay on this.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, most educational institutions are investing in technologies to detect some of that in order to maintain academic integrity.
Yeah.
But again, I think at a deeper level, we have to ask ourselves, why is it that our students are resorting to this, or why are people resorting to this? Is it because they don't have the tools and the ability to generate their own work?
Right.
And so, as parents, right, I would say that number one, I don't know if we can stop it, right? AI is coming. It is, it's beneficial in some ways. It's not in other ways. But I think as parents, if we foster a love of learning, if we foster a love of reading, if we foster a love of discovery, then maybe people will not resort, students in particular will not resort to saying, you know what, I'm just going to press enter and let it generate. I want to actually come up with my own stuff.
Right. And even kind of, again, in terms of color commentary, looking at it from a lens of a student. Look, at the end of the day, if you're a student, okay, and you're using AI, I for one strongly believe you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
You can give it as many prompts as you want, but it's not your work.
Yeah.
And it'll come to a point where, hey, even if you get all straight A's and B pluses and whatever, 90% averages and all of that, when you get into the real world, it's gonna come to a head. You'll be like, oh, hey, I coasted all through high school and uni with this AI chat GTP prompt stuff, and now I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You're going to put yourself into that kind of box, into that corner. So,
and it's bold of us to assume that a teenager can make that judgment call now, right? I mean, as a guidance counselor, I can tell you that they can't, right? Why can't they? Because growing up, my parents only cared about the mark on my report card. They didn't care about the learning.
Yeah.
Okay. The university that I'm applying to, they don't care if I know how to learn.
Oh yeah, as long as you get a 90%, 98%, or 99, or whatever the average is now, just get into the program.
Yeah, it's your top 6,
Yeah.
right? So it's your top 6. So where in the system is learning fostered, right? And that is maybe a bigger topic of conversation for the actual education and how we approach learning.
Great question.
But as parents, what we can do, especially in the formative years, is inspire a love of learning.
Yeah.
Right. So I like to learn new things, so I'm not going to put in the prompts, and then maybe mess myself up later on. But again, I think we as parents also have to, and this is hard, right? Because this is an abstract perspective, because you just get the report card as a parent.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know anything else. You don't know, okay, well, you know what? Does my child know how to ask the right questions? Does my child know problem solving? Can they handle stress? Can they handle fail? That stuff is not, you can't put a number on that.
Right.
So as parents, the more involved you are in the school and the education of your child, the more you'll be able to discern those things. And then maybe the numbers don't matter as much.
Yeah, I think Producer Scott should be a great future episode just to talk up, resiliency and grit, right? Just from a student perspective, and we could bring back Brother Omar for that. So let's get through some more questions.
Yeah, well, I think we'll do. Yeah, we're approaching our limits, so we'll do 3 more questions: one from Instagram, one from the live stream, and one from myself, maybe.
Sure.
So if you just maybe want to keep the answers a bit shorter.
Sure.
But, so the one from Instagram, let me pull it up here, was, how can we better meet the needs of children from distressed homes in our community?
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll try to keep this as short as possible. I mean, I think just an acknowledgement that it does exist.
Yes.
I think that sometimes, especially when children attend a private school, we make certain assumptions about their socioeconomic status, which can be wrong, right, at times, right? So when a child is coming from a distressed household, it usually reflects in their behavior at school. So, maybe they're misbehaving,
right.
Maybe they are not doing their homework, right? And one of the things that I would love to see implemented in all of our schools is, a breakfast program that is free of charge, right? Because oftentimes, I can remember very early in my teaching career, before I started the school, there's a child that was consistently misbehaving, and he, I sat down, like, what's going on? He said, I'm hungry. Right?
Yeah.
He's like, because I'm hungry.
Right.
And so I think that for us, understanding someone's situation, especially when they come from it takes patience. So one of the things that I've done, that we've done personally at the school, is that we have an in-school counselor now. Right. So if a child is having, any sort of difficulty, they're able to book an appointment. They're able to communicate, sort of what's going on, and then they're given strategies to implement to assist. Right.
Nice.
And so it's not, we just want to find out about your life. It's actually, we're trying to help. But that's it's a big problem in terms of trying to fix, right? But I think firstly acknowledging that it does exist, right, and then also focusing on the student, and if there are any sort of opportunities to assist the parents, like I would love to see possibly a fund set up by the masjids or the communities to assist with the fees, right, of children that may come from those households that need it, right? Because
great idea.
Oftentimes those children are maybe forced to go to public school, and they kind of fall through the cracks a little bit, or they're put on a IEP, which is an individualized education plan, and maybe they don't actually need it. Maybe they actually need to speak to somebody. Maybe they need the ability to heal, and so it's I'm trying to condense as much as possible, but I think acknowledgement from our community that it does exist, and alhamdulillah, we have more and more organizations popping up with social services that are able to assist parents navigating some of these things. So we have Muslim food banks now. We have shelters, right, for if individuals need it. So yeah, with regards to the actual student, right, I think there's empathy, right? Empathy and an understanding of their situation. You'll be surprised when a student feels that you care about them, how receptive they'll be to receiving that education. Coming back to this idea of a full cup, right? If somebody's coming with full cup and that cup has holes in it, right, they don't care about school. Right?
It's the least of the concerns.
Exactly. So we want to repair the cup, right, and then allow it to be full.
100%. Well said, Omar. Now producer Kashi, let's get to the next.
Yeah, of course. So we had a comment come in, a few comments. I'll share one of them. This is a great and much needed convo. As parents, we need to open our minds and our hearts. So yeah, Jazakallah for the tip. Someone that had asked a question just sent a follow-up saying, I know someone that is going through this tough situation and feels there's nowhere to turn. So inshallah, this conversation helps, and we pray to Allah for their ease and success.
Ameen.
Then another question has come in here, and we've talked about it before a lot, about correction before connection. Connection before correction. But maybe if you just want to answer this question, thanks so much for this informative session. I was just wondering what kind of strategies or resources you suggest for fathers in dealing with stray kids. Appreciate your response. Thanks.
So I'm assuming this means individuals that maybe not attentive to the religion, and I can give you I know I want to keep my answers as concise as possible, but a little bit of background about me was I attended Islamic school from grade 1 to 10. Okay. And in that time, I felt as though I didn't learn anything about Islam. Right. From the perspective as I left in grade 10, I went to public school. And I didn't leave praying my salah. I didn't leave with the value of the religion, to the point where like my parents would call me to pray, and I would say no, thank you, right, or I'll pray later. And so a lot of what I learned in Islamic school was the wrath and fear of Allah, right, and these are the rules, and if you don't do them, then Allah will punish you. And I think that for us as parents, is really important that we approach the religion from a perspective of love. And it's hard, right? Because we assume that fear will motivate somebody to do it, but that's not the case anymore, because our children are being fed dopamine hits from everywhere else. Everything else can make you feel good. Right. TikTok. Right. TikTok is 7 seconds. I feel good. And then I swipe up and I feel good again. And I feel good again. And then all of a sudden you tell me that the religion, right? You're telling me that I have to pray, right? Prayer doesn't make me feel good. It's taking me away from TikTok. It's taking me away from my game.
Great point.
Right? And so we have to present religion as a tool to liberate, not to constrain.
Right.
And sometimes that liberation is even of the self, but again, deeper conversation for another day. I will give this advice. I straighten myself out because of my parents' dua for me. The dua of the parent is accepted. This is a fact. Okay. My mom spent many hours making dua for me to pray my salah, and I would not be sitting here as Brother Omar, as I'm lovingly referred to in the community, if it was not for the supplications of my mom. And so for any parent who is dealing with children who might be not connected to the religion. It starts with your supplications, but then also it starts with, kind of encouragement. A lot of times when students are not, or people in general are not connected to the religion, is because something has happened.
Yeah.
Right. Something has happened. There was a negative experience. There was something. So we need to kind of address that.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess if I'm speaking to my elders in the community, my imams, and we also have to approach it from a friendly perspective, right? With people.
Agreed.
Right? Like we can't, stand up there on Friday and condemn everybody in the congregation and make them feel bad about themselves and say, okay, you guys go back to work. Yeah. Right? We need to uplift people, right? We need to make people feel the way that the Prophet, peace be upon him, made them feel. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he met you, right? He smiled at you. He held your hand. Right, he faced his whole body to you.
Yes.
Right, and he spoke to you in a gentle way to the point where every Sahaba felt like they were the most beloved person to him.
Yeah.
And so, do we make people feel like that?
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
And if we don't, right, and again, Islam needs to be represented in the home as well. Right. So we can't say, hey,
great point.
Come, I'm going to drag you to the masjid.
Right.
Right. How can we make that a more pleasant experience?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it comes back to the Cinnabon and maybe the ice cream. Right. You entice your children. And again, we can also engage our community leaders. Like if parents feel like, I'm in over my head, I don't know how to, we can engage our imams. Right. We can engage, our community leaders. And again, it has to come from the perspective of I love you and I want to help you, not, how am I going to answer Allah if he asks me about you on the day of judgment? Right. It needs to come from this idea, like, I'm trying to help.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to help. I care about you. So that's why we're going to talk to the imam, or that's why we're going to talk to this person. Right. Or that's why I'm sitting down in your room. Right. And then also give them a little bit of time to process what's being said. Like you don't go talk to them on, Monday night and then all of a sudden Tuesday morning, then this and then this and then this. Right. It's a process.
Great points. Great points, Brother Omar. We're going to wrap up the show.
Sorry,
Kashif.
yeah, just a few more comments. I agree.
Right.
Martial arts is more than just self-defense. It's about confidence boosting, learning how to overcome challenges, understanding that we can lose but still learn and come back stronger.
Yeah.
And then Jazakallah khair for the podcast.
Oh yeah.
And then there was a few more questions and comments. We apologize if we couldn't get to them, but inshallah next time we'll ask. I just want to ask one final question before maybe wrapping up. So when it comes to Islamic schooling, what can the larger community sort of do to support it? I always get these WhatsApp forwarded to me, petitions to the government, make Islamic schools free. I sort of cringe when I see that because nothing's free in this world, right? But, if I ever get a chance to talk to our education minister, Stephen Lache, get a chance to talk to Doug Ford, like what kind of support can I ask them for Islamic schools? Like what can the community do? Just want to hear from an administrator rather than random WhatsApp messages and opinions. Like how can the community support furthering Islamic education
Great question.
in Ontario?
Great question.
So I apologize if this is a little bit longer than we have time for, but I guess I'll just be blunt and communicate that public funding for faith-based schools is probably not something that's coming without a large amount of money to lobby. Okay, if I'm just being explicit, like I think it's a well thought out proposition, right? Well, a certain segment is funded. Why are we not funded? So I don't think it's coming anytime in the near future. What is available to our organizations is grants from the government. Okay. So there's grants from the federal government, there's grants from private organizations, there's grants from the provincial government, and those grants can be used to fund educational initiatives in our Islamic schools.
All right.
And so what we need to do when we speak to Doug Ford and our MPs and say, look, we have these needs in our school. We know we're not going to get funding the way that other schools get funding. What can you do to support this initiative? And it needs to be well thought out. Like we have to run our organizations in a very professional manner.
Yeah.
Right. Like are our schools clean? And then we ask the government for funding, or do we have proper desks? And then we ask the government for funding. Like we have to show that, we're serious about applying the funds and putting it into strong programming.
Right.
So what other schools are able to accomplish with, the government funding, and it is well over $1,000 per student that the public schools receive per student that attends their school in order to administer their education. Okay. So
or for that matter, proper computer labs or proper programs dealing with STEM initiatives, you know?
Right. So those grants exist.
Mm.
And so what we as a community need to do is to say, look, we want to do this. We need you guys to help us with the funding of it. So we're not
Okay.
asking you to pay us per student, but we're saying, look, we want a STEM lab,
Yeah.
right? And it's going to cost this, it's going to cost this, it's going to cost this. Then you engage your MP, right? And then you say, hey, does something like this exist in the government? How can we get access to it?
Okay.
Right. And so that is what I would start with, right? I think that we are almost trying to boil the ocean with trying to get funding for our schools.
Yeah.
But we can start by funding our programming.
Okay, great. And maybe again, the basis of another session podcast,
Yeah.
you know, another Sunday. So producer Kashif, green light to end the session. I've kind of jumped the shark a few times, but I've gotten a thumbs up. So this has been a full hour. This has been a full hour session. This is rarely done, but I think because of all the feedback, all the questions, and because of the nature of the topic, it was well worth the time. So Brother Omar, thank you so very much for
My
coming
pleasure.
and giving us your full hour
Not a problem.
of time and attention and answering all these questions. So I'll end off here. This has been such an informative session. I'm just mirroring a lot of what the comments have already come in, and a very much needed session. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a student, whether you're an educator, or whether you are someone trying to get that funding for a STEM lab for your Islamic school, watch this session. Forward this session, whether through WhatsApp or just take the YouTube link and forward it through email, but whatever you can, because it is a very much needed session for our community. I'll sign off with that. We've just put up on the screen the Gibraltar Leadership Academy homepage, website, GLA, and you can find more information there. So support your Islamic schools. And I'll end off the podcast. This is Brother Mushtaq signing off for the Happy Strong Family team on behalf of myself and producer Kashif. Tune in often every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Jazakallah khair.